I am Gabriel, 34 years old, and the night my family drove away from my home in a cloud of dust and insults was the night I finally stopped chasing their approval. Before I tell you how a simple TV broadcast caused my father to nearly choke on his expensive water and my brother's face to drain of all color, let me know where you guys are tuning in from in the comments. I love reading about where you all are from. It makes this whole internet thing feel a lot more like a real conversation. It was a Tuesday evening in late October. The air in the Pacific Northwest gets a certain kind of crispness that I usually love, but on this particular day, the cold felt like it was seeping right into my bones. I was standing in the driveway of what used to be the old textile mill on the edge of the city's industrial district. To the untrained eye, I admit it looked rough. The exterior was red brick that had darkened with soot and age over the last 80 years. There were vines climbing up the north wall that looked more like weeds than landscaping if you didn't know they were a specific species of ivy I'd imported to regulate the building's temperature. The steel door was heavy, industrial, and rusted in a way that looked neglected, though I had spent 3 weeks sealing that rust with a clear matte finish to preserve the patina. I wiped my hands on my jeans. I was nervous. My heart was doing that frantic rhythm against my ribs that it always did when my family was involved. You know that feeling? You're a grown man, you pay your own taxes, you run your own life, but the second you know your parents are coming over, you revert to being a 10-year-old boy terrified of getting a bad grade. I had been working on this place for 2 years. 2 years of sleeping on a mattress on a concrete floor while dust coated my lungs. 2 years of negotiating with city planners, electrical engineers, and heritage preservation committees. It was my masterpiece. It was Project Haven. And tonight was the unveiling. I heard them before I saw them. The distinct, aggressive roar of a V8 engine echoed off the empty warehouses down the street. A moment later, a Lamborghini Urus, painted a screaming, high-visibility yellow, turned the corner. It looked ridiculous against the backdrop of gray concrete and fading brick. It looked like a highlighter pen trying to draw over a black-and-white photograph. That was Connor, my older brother, the golden child. He pulled into the gravel driveway, kicking up a cloud of dust that coated the fresh hydrangeas I had just planted along the walkway. He didn't park. He just idled the engine, revving it twice just to make sure the entire neighborhood knew he had arrived. I took a deep breath, put on my best smile, and walked toward the car. The driver's side door opened, and Connor stepped out. He was wearing a navy blue suit that I knew cost more than my first car. It was tailored tight, too tight, honestly, hugging his chest in a way that screamed vanity. He adjusted his cuffs, looked at his shoes, and then looked at the gravel with distinct disgust. "Gabriel," he said. "No hello, no hug, just my name spoken like it was a bad taste in his mouth." "Hey, Connor," I said, extending a hand. "Glad you made it." He ignored my hand. He turned back to the car and opened the rear door. "Come on out, folks, but watch your step. It's filthy out here." My father, Robert, stepped out first. He was a man who believed that appearances were the only currency that mattered in this world. He scanned the building, the old brick, the graffiti on the adjacent wall that I had kept for artistic contrast, and his face fell. It wasn't just disappointment. It was embarrassment. He looked like he was afraid someone he knew might drive by and see him standing there. My mother, Sarah, followed him. She was clutching her designer handbag against her chest like a shield. She took one look at the steel door and the industrial vibe and physically recoiled. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, Dad," I said, trying to keep the wobble out of my voice. "Welcome to my home." There was a silence that stretched for a painful 5 seconds. The wind whistled through the gaps in the old fencing. "Home." Connor let out a short, sharp laugh. It sounded like a bark. "Gabriel, are you joking? You sent us a pin drop for this? I thought the GPS was broken. I thought it was taking us to a landfill." "It's an industrial conversion, Connor," I explained, trying to keep my tone light. "It's a restoration project. That's what I do. Remember, I know you play with garbage, Gabriel," Connor sneered, walking around the front of his rental. "Sorry, his new Lamborghini, and leaning against the hood. But I didn't think you lived in it. Look at this place. It's a dump. It looks like the kind of place where you go to buy illegal parts or get mugged. It's safe, Connor. The security system is safe. My mother interrupted, her voice shrill. She pulled her coat tighter around herself. Gabriel, look at those weeds. Look at that rust. It looks like a slum. I can't believe you invited us here. We're dressed for dinner, not for demolition work. The inside is done, Mom, I said, taking a step forward. I cooked. I made that roast lamb you like. I have a bottle of wine decanting. Just come inside. Please. My father finally spoke. He cleared his throat, a sound I associated with lectures and reprimands since childhood. Gabriel, son, we have standards. We have a reputation. Connor here just closed a massive deal. He's driving a Lamborghini. We can't be seen eating dinner in a warehouse district. It's undignified. It's my home, Dad, I said quietly. It's a bad investment, Connor shot back. I work in real estate, little brother. I know value. This is a money pit. You probably bought it for pennies, and it's still worth less than you paid. I'm not eating in that slum. I'm not risking my tires on this gravel, and I'm definitely not risking my digestion in a kitchen that probably has rats. I felt a cold hardness settle in my stomach. It wasn't anger exactly. It was clarity. For years, I had tried to show them my work. I had tried to explain the beauty of restoration, of taking something broken and making it whole again. But they only understood new, shiny, and expensive. We made reservations, Connor announced, checking his gold watch. At the Grand Hotel, the Sapphire Room, 5 stars, white tablecloths, valet parking, civilized. The Grand Hotel? I asked. The irony was already starting to form in the back of my mind, but I pushed it down. Yes, my mother said, looking relieved. It's for the best, Gabriel. Really. It's much more appropriate for a family celebration. Connor's promotion. Well, his success deserves a proper venue. Not this. She waved a hand vaguely at my building. You can come, Connor said, looking me up and down. I was wearing a charcoal cashmere sweater and dark jeans. Simple, high quality, but not a suit. But you might want to change. You look like you're ready to fix a sink. I cooked, I repeated, feeling the foolishness of the words as soon as they left my mouth. I spent 2 days prepping. Put it in Tupperware, my father said dismissively. Come on, Sarah. Get back in the car. It's cold out here, and this place is depressing. They started getting back into the bright yellow SUV. They didn't even look at the front door. They didn't ask to see the living room. They judged the book by its dusty, vintage cover and decided it wasn't worth reading. I stood there, my hands in my pockets. I could have begged. I could have told them, just step 5 feet inside, and you'll see. I could have told them about the heated floors, the skylights, the smart glass. But I smiled. It was a tight, small smile. Okay, I said. Connor paused with his hand on the door handle. Okay? You're coming. No, I said. I think I'll stay. I have guests coming. Guests? Connor laughed again. Who? The local homeless association? Suit yourself, Gabriel. Enjoy your leftovers. Don't blame us, honey, Mom added from the back seat as the window rolled up. We just want what's best for you. Maybe Connor can help you find a nice apartment complex. Something with a gate. The window sealed shut. The engine roared again, aggressive and loud, shattering the quiet of the evening. Connor spun the tires on the gravel, deliberately, I knew, sending a spray of small stones hitting the steel door of my home with a sound like hail. I watched the yellow Lamborghini speed away down the empty street, its taillights glowing like angry eyes. They were gone. I stood there for a moment in the silence they left behind. I looked at the dust settling on my hydrangeas. I looked at the rust on the door that they hated so much. Well, I whispered to the empty air. You can't say I didn't try. I turned around and placed my hand on the biometric scanner, hidden seamlessly behind a loose-looking brick next to the door frame. A soft blue light scanned my palm. There was a heavy, satisfying thunk of magnetic locks disengaging. The heavy steel door swung open silently on hidden hydraulic hinges. Warm, golden light spilled out onto the concrete. The smell of rosemary, garlic, and slow-roasted lamb drifted out to meet me. Smelled like home. It smelled like success. I walked inside and the door sealed shut behind me, locking out the cold, locking out the judgment, and locking out the family that had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Stepping inside my home was like stepping into a different dimension. The transition was designed to be jarring. Outside, it was 1940s industrial decay. Inside, it was 2024 minimalist luxury. The entryway opened up into a massive great room with 20-foot ceilings. The original steel trusses were exposed overhead, sandblasted to a sleek black finish. The floor was a continuous pour of polished concrete, heated from beneath, gleaming like dark water. To my right, a floating staircase made of reclaimed oak and glass ascended to the mezzanine level. I walked over to the kitchen island, a single, massive slab of quartz that had cost me more than my first 3 cars combined, and poured myself a glass of water. My hand was shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of restraint. I had wanted to scream at them. I had wanted to drag them inside by their expensive lapels. But the past had taught me that screaming at my family was like screaming at a brick wall, useless, and it only left you with a sore throat. As I stood there, looking at the empty space where my family should have been sitting, the memories hit me. They always did when Connor was around. He was a living trigger for my insecurities. I thought back to being 18, the summer after high school graduation. I was in the garage of our childhood home, grease under my fingernails, rebuilding the transmission of an old Ford I'd bought from a junkyard. I loved it. I loved understanding how things worked, how pieces fit together, how to make something run when everyone else said it was dead. My father had walked in, holding a brochure for a local technical college. "This is it, Gabriel," he had said, tossing it onto the workbench. "Diesel mechanic program. Good honest work." "Dad," I had said, wiping my hands on a rag, "I got into the architecture program at State. I showed you the letter. I want to design buildings. I want to restore them." He had looked at me with that same pitying look he gave me tonight. "Architecture is for artists and intellectuals, Gabriel. It's for people like, well, people like your brother. Connor is going to business school. He has the head for numbers, for strategy. You're good with your hands. You're a laborer, son. Don't reach for fruit you can't pick. You'll just fall and break your neck. You're a laborer." That phrase had burned a hole in my chest for 15 years. They spent my college fund on a new car for Connor when he turned 21, claiming it was an investment in his image for job interviews. I worked 3 jobs, construction during the day, bartending at night, and freelance drafting on the weekends, to pay my tuition. When I graduated top of my class, they didn't come to the ceremony. Connor had a networking golf tournament that weekend, and my parents felt they couldn't miss supporting him. I remembered the day the lawyer called me after my grandfather passed away. I thought maybe, just maybe, there would be something left for me. Grandpa was the only one who liked my drawings. But the inheritance had been structured strangely. The bulk of the liquid assets went to my father, who immediately funneled them into Connor's startups. I got a box of old tools and a small, dilapidated hunting cabin in the woods. My family laughed at the cabin. "A shack for the hermit," Connor had called it. They didn't know that I spent 2 years restoring that cabin with my own hands. I turned it into a boutique luxury retreat. I sold it for a profit of $300,000. That was my seed money. That was the start. I never told them. Why would I? Every time I shared a victory, they minimized it. "Oh, you sold a house? Cute." Connor just closed a merger. So I stopped sharing. I started building in the dark. I snapped back to the present. The doorbell chimed. A soft, melodic tone that resonated through the house. I checked the security monitor built into the kitchen counter. It wasn't a yellow Lamborghini. It was a matte black Range Rover and a vintage Aston Martin. My real guests had arrived. I opened the door, and this time the greeting was different. "Gabriel, you mad genius," Julian shouted, stepping out of the Aston Martin. Julian was my lead contractor, a man with forearms the size of tree trunks and a beard that could hide a badger. He was rough, loud, and absolutely brilliant with structural steel. "Hey, Julian," I grinned, the tension in my chest finally loosening. Behind him, stepping out of the Range Rover, was Lincoln. Lincoln was a man in his 60s, wearing a sweater that looked old but was probably woven from the wool of extinct sheep. He was a property tycoon, a billionaire who owned half the skyline of Seattle, but you'd never know it if you passed him on the street. "Gabriel," Lincoln said, his voice quiet and gravelly. He walked up to the door, paused, and touched the rusted steel. "You kept the original blast door. Smart. Very smart." "Come in, gentlemen," I said. "Dinner is ready." They walked in, and their reactions were everything my family's weren't. Julian let out a low whistle, spinning in a circle to look at the ceiling trusses. Man, seeing it on the blueprints was one thing. Standing in it? The acoustics are perfect. You put the sound dampeners behind the cedar slats. "Every single one," I confirmed. Lincoln walked silently to the center of the room. He looked at the floor, then at the massive glass wall at the back of the house that looked out over a private, Zen-style courtyard I had carved out of the old loading dock. "It's a sanctuary," Lincoln said softly. He turned to me. "You didn't just renovate a building, Gabriel. You curated an atmosphere. This is exactly what I was talking about for the Olympus project." "We can talk business later, Lincoln," I said, leading them to the dining area. "Tonight is about breaking bread. Or, well, breaking roast lamb." We sat down at the dining table, a 12-foot slab of live-edge walnut I had planed myself. I poured the wine. It was a vintage Cabernet, deep and complex. "Where's the family?" Julian asked, tearing off a piece of crusty bread. "I thought you said your folks and the golden boy were coming?" I took a sip of wine. "They came. They saw the driveway. They left." Julian stopped chewing. "You're kidding. They didn't even come inside." "Connor called it a slum," I said, trying to make it sound funny, but feeling that old sting again. "They went to the Grand Hotel. Said they needed somewhere dignified." Lincoln chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "The Grand Hotel? That tourist trap? The food there is frozen and reheated. And the decor hasn't been updated since the 90s. "Actually," I said, a mischievous glint entering my eye, "the lobby was updated last year. I should know. I did it." Lincoln raised an eyebrow. "You did the grand lobby? I didn't see your name on it." "I did it under a ghost contract," I explained. "I wanted the money, not the fame at the time. I needed the cash flow for the HVAC system here. But the management knows. Adrian knows." "Adrian is working tonight," Lincoln noted. "He texted me earlier. He's stressed out because of the broadcast." "The broadcast?" I asked. "You don't know?" Julian slammed his hand on the table, grinning. "Gabriel, man, why do you think we're here tonight? Apart from the free food." "I thought you came for my charm," I joked. "The show, kid." Lincoln pointed to the massive 85-inch screen recessed into the black stone wall of the living room. "Hidden Mansions. The season premiere. It airs in 20 minutes. They're featuring this place. It's the headliner." I froze. I had done the interview and the filming 3 months ago, but with the stress of the final inspections, I had completely forgotten the air date. "That's tonight?" I asked. 8 p.m. Eastern, Lincoln said. "Primetime. National syndication. Everyone who cares about real estate in this country is going to be watching. And probably half the people who just like to look at pretty things." A thought struck me. A thought so delicious, so perfect, that I almost felt guilty. "Wait," I said. "The Grand Hotel. They have those massive screens in the Sapphire Room, don't they? They play major events." "Always," Lincoln said. "It's their gimmick. Dinner and a show. And Connor," I murmured, "is obsessed with that show. He watches it to steal design ideas and pretend he understands luxury." I looked at the clock. 7:55 p.m. "There at the Grand," I said, a slow smile spreading across my face, "eating their overpriced steak, watching the big screen." Julian started to laugh. It started as a chuckle and grew into a belly laugh. Oh, this is going to be good. This is going to be poetic. Turn it on, Lincoln commanded, his eyes twinkling. I want to see the appraisal value part. I want to see if the appraiser got it right. I picked up the remote. You know, Dad always said he wanted to see me on TV. Maybe tonight he finally will. I pressed the power button. The screen flared to life. While I was pouring vintage Cabernet for a billionaire and a master builder in my slum, my family was living out their delusion of grandeur 5 miles away. The Grand Hotel was, in all fairness, a beautiful building. But it was the kind of beauty that felt heavy and suffocating. Velvet drapes, gold leaf paint that was starting to flake if you looked too closely, and chandeliers that hadn't been dusted properly in a month. It was old money aesthetic for people who had new money debt. Connor pulled the yellow Lamborghini up to the valet stand. He didn't just stop. He braked hard, making the tires chirp. A young valet jogged over. Good evening, sir. Welcome to the Grand. Connor stepped out, tossing the keys through the air without looking. The valet had to scramble to catch them. Keep it up front, Connor commanded, buttoning his jacket. And don't scratch it. That paint job costs more than your college tuition. Yes, sir, the valet said, his face tight. He got in the car. He noticed the warning light on the dashboard, service required, but he didn't say anything. He just drove it away to the lot, shaking his head. My parents walked into the lobby like royalty in exile. My mother scanned the room, looking for anyone she might know, anyone she could impress. Now this, Robert said, taking a deep breath of the air that smelled of industrial floral cleaner and old carpet. This is atmosphere. This is where we belong. Did you see Gabriel's face? Connor laughed as they approached the hostess stand. He looked like a kicked puppy. I made roast lamb. He mimicked my voice, making it sound high and pathetic. God, he's embarrassing. I tried to tell him, you can't live in the industrial district and expect people to respect you. He's always been different, Sarah sighed. Remember when he wanted to be an artist? Thank God we steered you into business, Connor. Look at you. A vice president. Senior vice president, Mom, Connor corrected, though the title was largely ceremonial at the small firm he worked for. A firm that was currently under quiet scrutiny by the SEC, though my parents didn't know that. They only knew about the promotion he claimed he got last month. They reached the hostess stand at the entrance of the Sapphire Room. Reservation for Mason, Connor said, tapping his fingers on the podium. 3 people. Best table you have. The hostess checked her tablet. Ah yes, Mr. Mason. We have you at table 42. It's near the kitchen. I'm afraid we're fully booked tonight. Near the kitchen? Connor's face went red. Excuse me? Do you know who I am? I drive the Urus out front. I want a booth. Center of the room. I'm sorry, sir. Those are reserved for our Diamond members and... Is there a problem here? A smooth, deep voice cut in. It was Adrian, the hotel manager. He was a man of impeccable style, wearing a suit that fit him like a second skin. He had eyes that missed nothing. Adrian, Connor exclaimed, his whole demeanor changing to a fake, oily charm. Good to see you, buddy. This girl is trying to put us by the swinging doors. I was just telling her that we need something a little more visible. Adrian looked at Connor. He didn't smile. He looked at Robert, then at Sarah. He recognized them immediately. Gabriel had shown him photos. These were the people who treated his best designer like dirt. Mr. Mason, Adrian said coolly, we are exceptionally busy tonight. Everyone is here for the premiere broadcast. The broadcast? Robert asked. Oh, the TV thing. Yes. We enjoy a bit of entertainment. Adrian paused. A thought seemed to cross his mind. He glanced at the massive LED wall at the far end of the dining room. Actually, Adrian said, a strange gleam in his eye, I think I can accommodate you. Table 1. It's right in front of the screen. Best view in the house. I think you'll find tonight's program illuminating. That's more like it, Connor smirked, shooting a triumphant look at the hostess. See? That's how you treat VIPs. Right this way, Adrian said. He led them to the prime table. It was center stage. Everyone in the restaurant would see them, and they would have no choice but to see the screen. They sat down. The waiter appeared instantly. "Bottle of Dom," Connor ordered without looking at the menu. "And bring the seafood tower. The big one." "Excellent choice," the waiter said. My family settled in. They felt like kings. "To us," Robert said, raising his water glass before the champagne arrived. "And to dodging a bullet. Can you imagine sitting in that drafty warehouse right now? Eating off paper plates. He probably doesn't even have heating," Sarah shuddered. "It looked damp. I bet it has mold. It's unhealthy." "I worry about him," Robert lied, trying to sound paternal for any eavesdroppers. "He just lacks ambition. He settles for filth. It's like he enjoys being at the bottom. Some people are just born to be mediocre." "Dad," Connor said, loosening his tie. "Gabriel is a mechanic at heart. He likes getting dirty. Let him play in his dump. We have the view." He gestured around the room. It was full of Portland's elite. Lawyers, doctors, tech CEOs. Connor desperately wanted to be one of them. He nodded at a man at the next table. The man didn't nod back. "By the way," Connor said, leaning in, "I have a lead on a new investment. Condo complex. I might need a bridge loan, Dad, just for a few weeks until my commission clears. But the return will be huge. Enough to pay off the mortgage." "Of course, son," Robert said, puffing out his chest. "Whatever you need. You're the one building the family legacy." "I'll have my lawyer draw up the papers," Connor said, using the word to sound important. In reality, he didn't have a lawyer. He had a template he downloaded from the internet. The champagne arrived. The cork popped with a festive sound. "To the Grand Hotel," Connor toasted. "And to not eating in a slum." They clinked glasses. The crystal rang out. At that exact moment, the lights in the restaurant dimmed. The chatter in the room died down. The massive screen on the wall, 20 feet wide, flickered to life. The sound system kicked in. A dramatic, orchestral intro played. "Welcome." The voice of Isaiah, the famous host, boomed through the restaurant. "To the season premiere of Hidden Mansions." "Oh, I love this show," Sarah squealed, clapping her hands lightly. "I love seeing how the other half lives." "Maybe I'll be on this next year," Connor said loudly, so the next table could hear. "With my new penthouse." Adrian stood in the shadows near the kitchen door, arms crossed, watching them. He tapped his earpiece. "Turn the volume up," he whispered to the tech booth. "I want them to hear every word." On the screen, a montage of beautiful homes flashed by. Then, the camera settled on a host standing on a gritty industrial street. "Tonight," Isaiah said on screen, walking down a cracked sidewalk, "we are in Portland, Oregon, and we are going to show you that you should never, ever judge a book by its cover." "Portland," Sarah gasped. "It's local." Connor squinted at the screen. The street looked familiar. The gray sky looked familiar. "Wait," Connor said, his champagne glass freezing halfway to his mouth. "Is that?" The camera panned up. It showed a red brick building with ivy climbing the wall. It showed a rusted steel door. It showed a freshly planted row of hydrangeas that had been crushed by tire tracks. "That looks like Gabriel's dump," Robert said, confused. "Why are they filming there? Is it a crime scene? Did they find a body?" "It has to be a condemnation report," Connor laughed nervously. "They do those segments on horror houses, right? Oh, this is rich. We're going to watch his house get condemned on national TV." "Oh, poor Gabriel," Sarah said, sounding delighted. "How humiliating." They leaned in, eyes glued to the screen, ready to gloat. They had no idea that the floor was about to drop out from under their world. The camera on the massive screen was high definition, 8K resolution. Every detail of the dump I called home was magnified 10 times over. In the sapphire room, my family watched with a mix of morbid curiosity and glee. "Look at that graffiti," Robert pointed at the screen with his fork. Disgusting. Who leaves that on their wall? On screen, Isaiah, the host, walked up to that very wall. He ran his hand over the spray paint. Most people would sandblast this off, Isaiah said to the camera. They would see vandalism. But the owner of this property sees history. He sealed the street art with a clear, museum-grade polymer. He framed the chaos of the street, making it a permanent part of the exterior. It's the first clue that this isn't just a building. It's a statement. Connor frowned. Statement? The statement is, I'm broke. Shoo, Sarah hissed. Listen. On screen, Isaiah walked to the front door, the rusted steel slab my mother had turned her nose up at. This door, Isaiah narrated, knocking on it. The sound was solid, heavy. It looks like scrap metal. But this is a blast-rated security door repurposed from a bank vault from the 1920s. It's equipped with biometric scanners and a magnetic locking system that rivals the Pentagon. Connor blinked. Biometric? Gabriel can't afford a Ring doorbell, let alone biometrics. Maybe the previous owner left it? Robert suggested, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. And here, Isaiah continued, pointing to the gravel. Even the driveway is deceptive. This isn't just gravel. It's permeable paving that filters rainwater into a collection cistern below the property, which feeds the entire irrigation system. It's eco-engineering at its finest. It's rocks, Connor muttered, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. He took a large gulp of champagne. The camera view switched to a drone shot. The drone flew up and over the building. From the street, it looked like a flat roof. But from above, oh my God! A woman at the table next to my family whispered. The roof wasn't flat tar. It was a garden. A lush, green oasis with a lap pool that shimmered like a jewel. Solar panels were integrated seamlessly into the decking. Is that a pool? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. On the roof. That can't be his building, Robert said firmly. It's the wrong one. It must be the building next door. It's the same building, Dad, Connor said, his voice tight. Look, there's the yellow paint on the curb where I parked. On the screen, the drone swooped down toward the courtyard I had built in the back, the one they hadn't bothered to drive around to see. It showed a sunken fire pit, a Japanese maple tree that cost $5,000, and the massive glass wall that revealed the interior. Let's go inside, Isaiah said on screen, and see the real magic. In the restaurant, the mood had shifted. People weren't eating anymore. They were watching. The contrast between the gritty street and the rooftop paradise was hooking everyone. Project Haven. The text on the screen read, a masterclass in adaptive reuse. Adaptive reuse, Connor repeated the term. He had heard it in real estate seminars but never really understood it. He thought it meant painting a barn white. On screen, the heavy steel door hissed open. My parents stopped breathing. The camera glided into the entryway. The music swelled, a mix of classical cello and modern synth. The interior was breathtaking. Even I, who lived there, felt a surge of pride seeing it through the lens of a cinematographer. The lighting was warm and golden. The polished concrete floors reflected the art on the walls like a mirror. Welcome to the Fortress of Solitude, Isaiah's voiceover said. 3,000 square feet of open-concept living. Radiant floor heating. A custom acoustic ceiling that turns a factory into a concert hall. The camera panned to the kitchen. Mom, Connor whispered. Look at the counter. Sarah stared. Is that quartz? That's imported Italian marble. A man at a nearby table said loudly. He was an architect. That single slab is worth more than a BMW. My mother looked down at her handbag. Suddenly, it didn't feel so expensive. This kitchen, Isaiah continued, running his hand along the cabinetry, was designed by the owner himself. Hand-milled walnut cabinetry. Sub-Zero appliances hidden behind custom panels. And this range, a French La Cornue. That stove alone costs $50,000. Robert choked on a piece of bread. He coughed violently, grabbing his water glass. 50,000? He wheezed. He fixed cars, Robert stammered to his wife. He likes grease. Where did he get $50,000 for a stove? Maybe he stole it? Connor suggested, but he looked sick. He looked like a man realizing he had just bet his life savings on the wrong horse. And look at this, Isaiah said, walking into the living room. The furniture isn't store-bought. It's commissioned. This sofa? Belgian linen. This coffee table? Petrified wood. The camera moved to the walls. But the real value, Isaiah said, is the art. The camera zoomed in on a painting hanging above the fireplace. It was a large, abstract piece. Chaotic but controlled. An original distinctive piece by the local artist collective, Isaiah noted. But wait! Look at the signature. The camera zoomed in. Gabriel Mason. The owner is also the artist, Isaiah said. A true Renaissance man. He painted that? Sarah asked. I thought he just doodled. I told him to stop wasting time on art. Robert whispered, his face pale. I told him it was for children. The camera panned around the room, capturing the elegance, the sophistication, the sheer money that dripped from every corner. But it wasn't flashy money like the Grand Hotel. It was quiet money. It was confident money. Then, the camera settled on a man sitting in a leather armchair, swirling a glass of wine. It was me. I looked calm. I looked commanding. I didn't look like the son who begged for approval. I looked like the man who owned the world. Mr. Mason, Isaiah asked the on-screen me. Why hide all this? Why leave the outside looking so rough? On the massive screen in the restaurant, my face was 10 feet tall. I looked directly into the lens. Felt like I was looking directly at table 1. Because, the on-screen Gabriel said, I value authenticity. I want a home that protects my peace. If someone can't see past the rough exterior to the value inside, then they don't deserve to come in. The silence in the sapphire room was deafening. Connor slumped in his chair. He felt the eyes of the entire room on him. He felt the weight of his rented suit, his leased car, his fake life. But the worst was yet to come. We have brought in a senior appraiser from Sotheby's, Isaiah announced, to give us a final valuation of Project Haven. An older woman in a sharp blazer appeared on screen. She held a clipboard. The industrial zoning has been converted to residential luxury, she began. The square footage is massive. The technology is state-of-the-art. The art collection alone is valued in the 6 figures. Robert leaned forward. He was trembling. He was a man who worshipped money, and he was about to find out how much he had just walked away from. So, Isaiah asked, what is the number? Considering the current market boom in this district, the appraiser said, and the unique, one-of-a-kind nature of this property. She paused for dramatic effect. I placed the value at $8.5 million. $8.5 million. The words hung in the air of the sapphire room like a guillotine blade that had just dropped. My father, Robert, didn't just choke this time. He inhaled his water. He hacked, his face turning a violent shade of purple. He knocked over his wine glass, sending a red stain spreading across the pristine white tablecloth like a gunshot wound. Robert! Sarah shrieked, patting his back. But her eyes were still locked on the screen, wide with a mixture of horror and greed. 8 million, Connor whispered. His voice was so high it cracked. That's impossible. It's a warehouse. It's bricks. It's a dump. It's a masterpiece, a voice said from the table behind them. It was the man who had identified the marble earlier. That kid is a visionary. Do you know what the appreciation on a property like that is? He probably bought the shell for peanuts. He bought it for $400,000, Robert wheezed, finally catching his breath. I laughed at him. I told him he was throwing his money into a burn pit. On the screen, the tour continued. We went down to the garage my family refused to enter. And for the car enthusiasts, Isaiah said, opening the garage door. Inside, parked on pristine epoxy floors, were 3 cars. Not flashy, leased Lamborghinis. Real cars. A 1967 Shelby Mustang GT 500, restored to perfection. A vintage Porsche 911 Targa. And a modern Tesla Roadster. I restore cars to clear my head, the on-screen Gabriel explained, running a hand over the Mustang. It teaches you patience. Connor looked at the screen. Then he looked out the window toward the valet lot where his yellow Urus was parked. He suddenly realized that his brother didn't just have money. His brother had taste. And more importantly, his brother owned his things. Connor owned nothing. Everything Connor had was on credit, on a lease, or borrowed. The realization hit him physically. He felt nauseous. The seafood tower arrived at the table, a towering display of lobster and crab, but looking at it made him want to vomit. On screen, Isaiah turned to me for the final question. Gabriel, you could live anywhere. You could buy a penthouse in the city center. Why here? I leaned forward in the interview. Because this place is real. It has scars. It has history. It's not pretending to be something it's not. In a world full of people trying to impress strangers with things they can't afford, I wanted a place that was just for me, and for the people who actually care about me. The camera held on my face for a beat longer than usual. My expression was serene, but there was a sadness in my eyes that the audience might not have understood, but my family certainly did. People like my team, I added on screen. Like Julian, like Lincoln. The camera showed shots of the dinner party I was having, the one happening right now while my family sat in the hotel. It showed Lincoln raising a glass. Wait! Robert squinted. Is that Lincoln Vance? Who? Connor asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. Lincoln Vance. Robert hissed. The real estate mogul. The guy who owns half of downtown. You've been trying to get a meeting with his secretary for 3 years, Connor. That's him, Connor said, his jaw dropping. He's at Gabriel's house? Eating roast lamb. He's eating the dinner we turned down, Sarah whispered. She looked at her empty plate. She looked at the faces of the strangers around her. She suddenly felt very small and very cheap. This is the moment, I said to the camera, closing the segment. This is the moment I finally built a life that fits me. The show cut to commercial. The Sapphire Room was buzzing. People were pointing at the screen, talking excitedly about the hidden mansion. Did you see that kitchen? I need his number. I need him to design my beach house. That guy is a genius. And then the whispers turned toward table 1. Hey! Someone whispered loudly. Aren't those the people who walked out? I saw them in the intro. They were the ones in the yellow car. Yeah, that's them. The family who called it a slum. Can you imagine? Walking away from an $8 million dinner to come eat. Here, the judgment was palpable. It wasn't the admiration my parents craved. It was ridicule. They were the punchline of the joke. We have to go, Connor said, standing up abruptly. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. We have to leave. Now. We haven't eaten, Robert protested weakly. I don't care, Connor snapped. He looked wild-eyed. People are staring. I can't be seen here. I need to call Gabriel. Sit down, Mr. Mason. Adrian's voice cut through the panic. The manager stepped out of the shadows. He wasn't holding a menu this time. He was holding a bottle of wine. A very specific bottle. It was the same vintage Cabernet Gabriel had been drinking on TV. What do you want? Connor snarled. Bring the check. There is no check, Adrian said calmly, placing the bottle on the table. It's already been taken care of. What? Robert asked. Who paid? The owner of Project Haven, Adrian said, his voice carrying clearly across the silent room. Mr. Gabriel Mason. He called 10 minutes ago. He knew you would be watching. He wanted to make sure his family had a good meal, since you couldn't stomach his cooking. He paid. Sarah covered her mouth. This wasn't generosity. This was a power move. This was Gabriel saying, I can buy and sell you, and I will still feed you because I am better than you. He also asked me to give you a message, Adrian continued. He looked at Connor. He said, enjoy the view. It's the closest you'll ever get to the inside. You. Connor pointed a shaking finger at Adrian. You're enjoying this. I am, Adrian admitted, a small professional smile touching his lips. Because, Mr. Mason, you walked in here treating my staff like servants and my hotel like your personal playground. You bragged about your car and your money. But the man you insulted? Gabriel? Adrian paused, letting the room listen. Gabriel Mason designed this lobby. He designed the lighting you're sitting under. He consulted on the Sapphire Room's renovation. He is a silent partner in the design firm that revitalized this entire hotel brand. When he walks in here, he doesn't need to demand a table. We give him the keys. Robert looked at the beautiful chandeliers above him. He looked at the intricate molding on the walls. His son had done this. His mechanic son. I didn't know, Robert whispered. He never told us. Did you ever ask? Adrian replied. The question hung in the air, heavy and accusing. Did you ever ask him what he was building? Or were you too busy telling him what he wasn't? Sarah started to cry. Silent, ugly tears that smeared her expensive mascara. She realized, in that moment, that she had bet on the wrong son. Not just financially, but morally. She had thrown away the diamond to keep the rhinestone. This is the moment that changed everything. I thought, watching the scene unfold in my mind's eye from my living room, miles away, I had taken back control. This is the moment where everything shifted, when I finally reclaimed my narrative. Thank you for sticking with me this far. You guys are amazing. Please smash that like button and comment 1 below if you're enjoying the justice served hot. It helps more people find this story, and it tells me that my journey means something to you. Your support is the fuel that keeps me sharing. The walk of shame is a concept usually reserved for college students or politicians caught in scandals. But that night, my family invented a new category. The walk of absolute crushing regret. They couldn't stay. The stares in the Sapphire Room were like physical blows. Every whisper felt like an insult. Let's go, Connor hissed, grabbing his mother's arm a little too roughly. Dad, get up. Robert rose shakily. His legs felt like jelly. He looked at the uneaten seafood tower, the untouched champagne, and the bottle of wine Adrian had left, a symbol of Gabriel's victory. We're leaving, Robert announced to no one in particular, trying to salvage a shred of dignity. The service here is oppressive. Of course, sir, Adrian said, stepping aside. Do drive safely. They marched through the lobby, the same lobby Gabriel had designed. Now everywhere they looked, they saw him. The curve of the reception desk? Gabriel. The lighting fixtures? Gabriel. The very floor beneath their feet seemed to mock them with its elegance. They pushed through the revolving doors into the cool night air. I'm going to kill him, Connor muttered, pacing on the sidewalk while waiting for the valet. He set us up. He planned this. He knew the show was airing. He wanted to humiliate us. He succeeded. Sarah sobbed into a tissue. Connor, everyone saw us. My friends at the club, they all watched that show. They're going to know I called my son's $8 million mansion a slum. Stop crying, Mom. Connor snapped. We'll spin it. We'll say we were joking. We'll say it was a prank for the TV show. Yeah. That's it. We were in on it. Nobody is going to believe that, Robert said heavily. Did you see my face when the price came up? I looked like I was having a stroke. The valet appeared, but he wasn't driving the yellow Lamborghini. He was walking, and he was accompanied by 2 police officers and a man in a cheap suit holding a clipboard. Connor stopped pacing. His face, already pale, went translucent. Mr. Connor Mason? The man with the clipboard asked. Who are you? Connor demanded, his voice trembling. Where is my car? I'm a recovery agent for Prestige Exotics Leasing, the man said. And these officers are here to assist with the repossession. Repo? Robert asked, confused. Connor, what is he talking about? You bought that car. You showed us the title. I. Connor stammered. It's a mistake. A banking error. I transferred the funds this morning. The card on file was declined, Mr. Mason, the agent said, bored, for the third month in a row. And we received a tip that the vehicle was being used in violation of the rental agreement. Specifically, being driven for commercial purposes to defraud investors. Defraud, Sarah gasped. Connor, it's a misunderstanding. Connor screamed, backing away. Dad, tell them. I'm a senior vice president. The car has been immobilized and loaded onto the truck around the corner, the agent said. We also have a warrant here regarding some irregularities with the bridge loans you've been soliciting. The police officers stepped forward. Mr. Mason, we need you to come with us to answer some questions regarding a Ponzi scheme investigation involving Mason Reality Ventures. Ponzi scheme. Robert repeated the words. They tasted like ash. Mason Reality Ventures. That was the company Robert had sunk his retirement fund into. That was where the inheritance money had gone. Connor, Robert said, his voice dangerously low. Where is my money? It's invested. Connor cried as the officer took his arm. It's tied up. Dad, I just need time. If Gabriel gives me a loan. If we can just get Gabriel to sign as a guarantor. Don't you dare say his name, Robert roared. It was the first time in his life he had ever raised his voice at his golden child. You lost the car? You lost the money? Sir, you have the right to remain silent, the officer recited, handcuffing Connor right there under the grand awning of the hotel Gabriel had renovated. My parents stood there on the sidewalk, watching their successful son being shoved into the back of a police cruiser. The yellow Lamborghini, the symbol of their pride, was gone. The dinner was ruined. Their reputation was shattered. And they were stranded. They had ridden with Connor. They didn't have a car. Sarah looked at Robert. How do we get home? Robert checked his pockets. I left my wallet on the table inside. In the confusion, they looked back at the hotel doors. They would have to go back in. Back past Adrian. Back past the staring diners. To retrieve a wallet so they could call an Uber. Inside the hotel, Adrian watched from the window. He picked up his phone and typed a quick message to Gabriel. Show's over. The encore was even better. Connor left in a police car. Your parents are walking back in to get a wallet. Want me to call them a cab? Back at my house, the phone buzzed. I looked at the message. I looked at Julian and Lincoln, who were laughing over cigars and brandy by the fire pit. I typed back, no, let them call their own cab. They need to learn the value of $1. I put the phone down. I took a deep breath of the clean, filtered air of my dump. I had never felt lighter. The heavy weight of seeking their validation had finally lifted, carried away by a tow truck and a reality check. My phone buzzed again. It wasn't Adrian. It was my mother. Gabriel, honey, please pick up. It's an emergency. Connor is in trouble. We are at the hotel. Please bring the car. The nice one. We need to talk. I looked at the text. I looked at the nice one part. Even now, in the depths of their disaster, they were thinking about the optics. They wanted me to save them, but they also wanted me to look good doing it so they could salvage some pride. I didn't reply. I pressed the block button. Then I blocked my father. And finally, I blocked Connor. Everything okay? Lincoln asked, noticing my expression. Yeah. I smiled. And this time, it was a genuine, full smile that reached my eyes. Everything is perfect. Who wants dessert? The days following the dinner at the Grand Hotel were a blur of silence and noise. The silence was inside my home, where I finally had the peace I had craved for decades. The noise was everywhere else. It started with the local news, then the state news, then the financial blogs. Connor's arrest wasn't just a simple case of a declined credit card. It was the loose thread that, when pulled, unraveled an entire tapestry of lies. The investigation into Mason Reality Ventures revealed that my brother hadn't just been faking it till he made it. He had been actively defrauding investors, using new money to pay off old debts, and using our parents' retirement funds as his personal piggy bank to lease cars and buy suits he couldn't afford. I didn't have to lift a finger. I just watched from my living room, sipping coffee, as the house of cards my family had built on a foundation of arrogance came crashing down. About 3 weeks after the arrest, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was a lawyer representing my parents. "Mr. Mason," the attorney said, his voice sounding exhausted. "I am representing Robert and Sarah Mason in the matter of their asset liquidation. They are currently facing foreclosure. Connor's power of attorney allowed him to leverage their home equity against his business loans. The bank is calling in the debt." I stood by the glass wall of my courtyard, watching the rain fall on the Japanese maple. "And why are you calling me?" "Your parents are destitute, Mr. Mason," the lawyer said. "They are looking for a bridge loan, or perhaps a buyer for the property who might allow them to rent back. They specifically asked if you would be interested in acquiring the family home." The family home. The place where I was told I wasn't smart enough. The garage where I was told I was just a laborer. The dining room where I was ignored while Connor was treated like a prince. "Tell them no," I said. "Mr. Mason, they are your parents," the lawyer pressed. "They are facing eviction." "I am a laborer, remember?" I said, my voice steady. "I play with garbage. I don't have the sophistication for suburban real estate. Tell them to call Connor. He's the businessman." "Connor is currently being held without bail, sir. He is facing federal charges." "Then I guess they better start packing," I said, and hung up. "It sounds cold. I know it does. But you have to understand that for 30 years, I was the safety net they used to wipe their feet on. I wasn't going to catch them this time. I needed them to hit the ground so they could finally learn how to stand up on their own." 6 months passed. My life exploded in the best way possible. The episode of Hidden Mansions broke viewership records. Project Haven became a viral sensation. My inbox was flooded with offers. Lincoln Vance, true to his word, brought me in as the lead architect on the Olympus project, a massive revitalization of the downtown waterfront. I wasn't just restoring buildings anymore. I was restoring the city. I was busy. I was fulfilled. I was happy. One afternoon, I was on site at the Olympus project, wearing a hard hat and reviewing blueprints with Julian, when a beat-up Honda Civic pulled up to the security gate. I wouldn't have noticed it, except the security guard was arguing with the driver. I squinted through the dust. The driver looked familiar. He was older, grayer, and wearing a jacket that looked 2 sizes too big for him. It was my father. My first instinct was to turn around and walk back into the structure. I didn't want the drama. I didn't want the excuses. But something about his posture stopped me. He wasn't standing tall and puffing out his chest like he used to. He was slumped. He looked defeated. I sighed and walked over to the gate. "It's okay, Mike," I told the guard. "I know him." Robert looked at me through the chain-link fence. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at my boots, then up to my face. "You look good, Gabriel," he said. His voice was raspy. "You look important." "I'm working, Dad," I said, not opening the gate. "What do you want?" "If it's about money, the answer is still no." "It's not about money," he said quickly. He reached into the passenger seat of his car and pulled out a plastic container. It was Tupperware. I made this." I stared at the container. "What is it?" "It's lasagna," he said. "I saw a video on your YouTube channel, the one where you cooked for your crew. You said the secret to a good lasagna is the bechamel sauce, not ricotta. I tried to make it." I looked at him, truly looked at him, for the first time in months. He looked tired. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a deep, etched sorrow. "Why?" I asked. "We lost the house," he said quietly. "We're in a 1-bedroom apartment on 82nd. Small, but the kitchen works." He paused, his hands gripping the plastic container like a lifeline. "I have a lot of time on my hands now, Gabriel. I'm retired. Forced retirement, really. Nobody wants to hire a man whose son is on the front page for fraud. So, I started watching your videos. Not the house ones, the cooking ones, the ones where you fix cars." He looked down at his shoes. They were scuffed. "I never knew you could weld," he whispered. I watched you fix that Mustang chassis. You were so precise. You explained it so clearly. I watched it 3 times. Dad? I said, feeling a lump form in my throat. I didn't want to feel it, but it was there. What is this? I was wrong, he said. He looked up, and his eyes were wet. I was so wrong. I thought Connor was the success because he looked the part. I thought you were the failure because you got your hands dirty. But you were building things, real things, and we were just watching a performance. He pushed the Tupperware through the gap in the fence. I'm not asking for money, he said, and I'm not asking you to forgive me. I know I don't deserve that. I wanted you to know that I see you now. I really see you, and I'm sorry I missed it for 34 years. I stood there, the sounds of jackhammers and cranes roaring behind me. I looked at the lasagna. It looked a little burnt on the edges. It wasn't perfect. Connor called me, I said. From prison. Robert flinched. He calls us too, asking for bail money we don't have, blaming his partners, blaming the economy. He still doesn't get it. He never will, I said. No, Robert agreed. He never will. He's lived in a fantasy for too long. A fantasy we paid for. Robert took a step back toward his car. I won't keep you. You have a city to build. I wanted to bring you this, to say thank you for the dinner that night, the one we didn't eat. He turned to get into his beat-up car. Dad? I called out. He stopped, his hand on the door. I unlocked the gate. I walked out and took the container from his hand. It was still warm. The bechamel, I said. Did you use nutmeg? He blinked, surprised. Just a pinch, like you said in the video. Good, I said. That's the trick. I didn't hug him. I didn't invite him in for a tour of the site. We weren't there yet. We might never be there. But I took the lasagna. Drive safe, Dad, I said. You too, son, he said. And for the first time in my life when he said, son, it didn't sound like an obligation. It sounded like a title he was finally proud to use. I watched him drive away. Then I walked back to the job site, sat on a stack of lumber, and ate the lasagna. It was burnt. It was dry. It was the best thing he had ever given me. Life, I've learned, doesn't always give you a movie ending. The bad guys don't always vanish into a puff of smoke, and the family doesn't always gather around a turkey dinner, holding hands as the credits roll. Sometimes the ending is quiet. Sometimes it's just a boundary line drawn in the sand that everyone finally agrees not to cross. It had been a year since the night of the Hidden Mansions broadcast. Connor was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison for wire fraud and embezzlement. The judge, in his closing remarks, noted Connor's complete lack of remorse and delusional entitlement. I didn't go to the sentencing. I read about it in the paper like everyone else. My mother, Sarah, had taken a job as a receptionist at a dental office. It was a humble job, one she would have mocked 2 years ago. But she needed the salary. The social circle she had tried so hard to impress had abandoned her the moment the scandal broke. She was learning, painfully late in life, that friends bought with prestige are not friends at all. And me? I was sitting in my courtyard, the one with the Japanese maple. It was autumn again. The leaves were turning a brilliant crimson. I had invited my parents over. Not for a party, not for a show, just for coffee. It was the first time they had stepped foot on the property since the night they peeled out of the driveway in the yellow Lamborghini. I buzzed them in. They walked up the permeable gravel path. They walked slowly, looking at the ivy, looking at the rust on the steel door. This time they didn't sneer. They looked at it with a strange sort of reverence, like pilgrims visiting a shrine they didn't quite understand. I opened the door. Hi, I said. Hi, Gabriel, Mom said. She was holding a small potted plant. A peace lily. It was a cliché, but it was an effort. They came inside. They took off their shoes without me asking. We sat in the living room, the same room that had been on TV, the same room that was valued at millions. But today it was just a living room. I poured coffee. It's quiet here, Mom said. looking out at the water feature. It's very peaceful. It is, I said. We visited Connor last week, Dad said, his voice heavy. He didn't look at me when he said it. He looked at his coffee cup. How is he? I asked, more out of politeness than concern. He's angry, Dad said. He blames the lawyer. He blames the judge. He blames us. He asked why you haven't visited. He knows why, I said. We told him, Mom added softly. We told him that you owe him nothing. We told him that he's where he is because of his own choices. I looked at my mother. This was a woman who used to enable Connor's every whim. A woman who would blame the teacher if Connor failed a test. To hear her assign responsibility to him was a shift so seismic I almost didn't believe it. He didn't like that, Dad chuckled dryly. He hung up on us. There was a silence. But it wasn't the awkward, judgmental silence of the past. It was a sad silence. The silence of three people grieving a dynamic that was dead. Gabriel, Dad said, setting his cup down. We are trying. We are paying off our debts. We are living within our means. It's hard, but it feels honest. For the first time in a long time, I sleep at night. I'm glad, Dad, I said, and I meant it. We wanted to ask you. Mom began, her hands fidgeting. Thanksgiving is coming up. We know you probably have plans, big plans, with your friends. But if you have a moment, just a coffee, or a dessert, we would love to have you over at the apartment. It's small, but I'll make that apple pie you used to like. I looked at them. They were old. They were broken. They were trying to glue the pieces back together with humility instead of pride. The old Gabriel, the one who craved their love, would have jumped at the chance. He would have canceled everything to spend the day in their cramped apartment, desperate for a crumb of affection. But I wasn't that Gabriel anymore. I was the architect of my own life now. And an architect knows that you can't build a stable structure on a cracked foundation overnight. I can't do Thanksgiving, I said gently. I'm hosting Julian and Lincoln and their families here. We have a tradition now. I saw the disappointment in their eyes, but they nodded. They accepted it. But, I continued, I can come by the Sunday after, for breakfast, if you make the pie. My mother's face lit up. It wasn't the fake, social climbing smile she used to have. It was a genuine, fragile smile. Sunday is perfect. We'll make it fresh. And Dad, I said, looking at him, bring that lasagna recipe. I think you're still using too much nutmeg. I need to show you how to balance it. Dad grinned. It was a weak grin, but it was real. You think you can teach the master, huh? I think I can teach the student. I smiled back. They left an hour later. I watched them walk down the driveway to their beat-up Honda. They didn't look back at the mansion with envy. They just looked like two parents who were lucky to still have one son who would talk to them. I closed the heavy steel door. I locked it. I walked to the center of my home. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the polished concrete. The house was silent, save for the gentle hum of the filtration system and the distant trickle of the koi pond. I had won, but the victory wasn't the money. It wasn't the $8.5 million appraisal. It wasn't seeing Connor in handcuffs or my parents in a Honda Civic. The victory was standing in a room that I built, in a life that I designed, and feeling completely, totally adequate. I didn't need them to tell me I was good enough anymore. I didn't need the shiny car to prove I was successful. I didn't need the grand hotel. I had my dump. I had my slum. I had my haven. And for the first time in my life, when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the mechanic or the laborer or the disappointment. I saw Gabriel Mason, and he was finally home. This story isn't just about real estate or revenge. It's about the dangerous cost of external validation. Gabriel spent years letting his family's warped value system dictate his self-worth. He believed he was less than because he didn't fit their specific mold of success, shiny suits and least luxury. How many of us do that? How many of us hide our true talents or passions because the people around us don't understand them? The biggest lesson Gabriel learned, and the one I hope you take away, is that value is intrinsic, not superficial. Just like his house, your worth isn't determined by the curb appeal or what others see at first glance. It's determined by the foundation you build, the work you put in when no one is watching, and the peace you cultivate inside. Also, remember this: forgiveness does not mean amnesia. Gabriel forgave his parents, but he didn't let them back into the driver's seat of his life. He set boundaries. He accepted their growth but protected his own peace. That is the healthiest thing you can do with toxic family members who are trying to change. You can love them, but you don't have to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. I want to hear from you. What is your hidden mansion? What is the thing in your life that others might undervalue, but you know is your greatest treasure? Is it a hobby, a relationship, a career path? Drop a good in the comments if this story resonated with you, or share one thing you're going to stop apologizing for after hearing Gabriel's story. Thank you for listening. Thank you for giving me your time. Go build your haven, whatever that looks like for you. You deserve it.